All right, so thanks everybody for joining us. Here's my little don't forget to record slide. I'm Gabe. I'm a four-time entrepreneur with two successful exits. And one of those entrepreneurial ventures was actually an early HubSpot agency that joined HubSpot in 2011 before eventually selling my agency to HubSpot's Partner of the Year. And then actually making it to HubSpot as well, where I worked as both in product strategy and as a senior product marketing manager. These days, I'm working as a fractional PMM. I'm doing HubSpot consulting in the CMS and Content Hub as well, and doing some onboarding and RevOps work. And as you guys can all tell from these pictures, I have a real passion for adventure, but the real secret ingredient is AI because all these images are generated with AI. There is actually one of these experiences though that's real. I don't know if any of you can guess which one is actually the real one.
I'd say the
But
one on the horseback.
the horseback, oh, that was me participating in Yellowstone as an extra, but that is actually not the correct answer. That was that prop. It's actually wrestling with a lion and tiger. And so there's actually a lion in the background you can't see here. This was about 20 years ago. It's a really great story. If you catch me around sometime, I'll kind of fill you in on the fun details of that one. But so for today's agenda, we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about why does personalization matter? We're going to talk about how to design a personalization strategy, where personalization can go wrong, and also how to actually implement your personalization strategy with some QA at the end. So let's kick it off and just start with why does personalization matter? Um, and so why does it matter? And really, it's because customers want and expect it. So it's 2025, and it's really become essential. So 92% of consumers expect companies to deliver highly personalized experiences across all touch points, according to some recent research. And the research also found that when customers don't get this personalized experience, the majority of them actually end up frustrated. What's even crazier is when they actually did this survey 2.5 years ago, that number was actually 71%, still very high. But to just see it shoot up so high just in those 2.5 years, it's almost 100% of people want personalization these days. So, additionally, according to a Accenture study, 83% of consumers are willing to share their personal data to actually enable personalization. So, consumers are hungry for personalized experiences, and so much so that they're willing to share their data. But is it really surprising though? These days we all expect digital experiences to be seamless and personalized, and AI is actually just compounding that. You have companies like Amazon, Netflix, and Uber who are setting this new standard for one-to-one experiences. The bar has just been set really high. And with that bar set high, everyone now expects that same experience from any type of company. Doesn't matter whether you're mid-market, small biz, B2B, B2C. It doesn't matter. The expectation is the same. And consumers now see these personalized journeys as just being the default. So as B2B marketing leaders, B2B, they're starting to increasingly understand that personalized experience are no longer just a nice to have, they're now a necessity. Oh, skip the slide there. But look, here's the beautiful part. Building world-class personalized experiences isn't just good for the end customer. It's also good for the company. And so if you look at McKinsey, for instance, McKinsey calls personalization the holy grail. They actually cite a recent Harvard study which shows that personalized experiences can reduce acquisition costs by 50%. They can increase revenue 10 to 15%, with some digital native companies seeing lifts as high as 25%. And you can also increase efficiency in your marketing spend by 10 to 30%. I mean, who doesn't want all of these things? These are all like excellent things to have. But look, there is still work to do. When Forrester surveyed end customers, the majority of customers cited their experiences, it's okay, it's fine, nothing really to write home about. And while, is this depressing? Maybe, but I actually see this as exciting. And why is that? Because this is your opportunity, right? Think about it. Customers expect seamless digital experiences. Good experiences impact the growth of the business, but a majority of current experiences they're okay at best right now. So creating a world-class personalized experience is a huge opportunity that can give you a strategic advantage over your competition. So embrace that opportunity. So let's jump in on how to design a personalization strategy. So when we look at what makes up a personalization strategy, we have five different areas. First is the goals. What challenge are we trying to solve? Are we trying to improve demo page conversion rates? Are we trying to increase upsells? The second is your audience. How am I going to divide my audiences to target them with personalization? Now, this is different than personas or maybe segments, and we'll discuss that why in a little bit. The third is data. What data do I need to be successful? What data do I need? The fourth is personalization tactics. So, what are the tactics that I'm actually going to use to deliver my personalization? And then finally, we're going to do review and refine. How am I going to measure success? Am I ready to add more personalization? And so let's jump in and take a closer look at each one of these. So we aren't just doing personalization for kicks and giggles, right? There's got to be a reason to do it. And so some of the common areas personalization can help with include improving conversion rate, improving website engagement, increasing cross-sell and upsell and resell opportunities. They can help to target very specific accounts or companies, and they can be used to just overall improve customer experience. And so these are some of the levers that we can pull if we want to improve the performance of our programs. So let's say I want to improve conversion rate on my demo page by 10%. I want to increase the time on page on our services page. I want to increase resells, right? So if for instance, you could just have a landing page doing really well, it's converting at, let's say, 5%, 10%. If you could add another 10%, you're going to double your conversion rate, maybe triple your conversion rate. That's going to have your implications down the line for your pipeline and so on. And so that's the first part, is determining what are our goals. After we have our goals, you have to know who you're personalizing to. And so you'll notice, in addition to knowing your persona and segments, you have to divide that actually into two groups. You're going to have known users and unknown users. And that's because 95% of the traffic to your website will be unknown users. And I won't have the same level of data that I will for those unknown users as I will for known users. And so we have to plan for both scenarios, and we have to know how to identify them. And so typically when you think about personalization, what comes to mind is known users. We know we know who they are typically by a cookie that gets set when they maybe filled out a form, and we know who they are. And when we know who they are, we can very specifically target them. And so, for instance, I can create a contact list based on everybody who's a CEO in the software industry and target anybody in that group, for instance, who maybe visits our service page. Or I can even just keep it more simple, right? Maybe I just want to target the software industry in general and give somebody who's in software or maybe a specific role a different message than somebody who's in a different industry or a different role. And so I have a ton of flexibility here to identify those users, like the criteria you're seeing on the screen here. And these are just some of the most common ones. And you'll also notice that you have targeting by geography, language, ad referrals, link clicks. Now, these are done typically a little differently. These are going to look at the IP address, the browser language, or the URL, or potentially the tracking code behavior, and it's going to identify those. And these can also, those methods can also be used for our unknown visitors, which I'll look at yet. But the problem with known visitors is they're typically only 1 to 5% of the visitors who are on your site. And that usually skews actually more towards the lower end. It's generally between 1 to 3%. If it's 5%, you're usually doing something really well. So, but what if the other 95%? And those are going to be your unknown visitors. And so, as I mentioned in the last slide, we can group and target these users based on web engagement or pretty much anything they do on our website. We can target them by geography, like country or city. We can target them by ad referrals, maybe a specific ad they clicked on that has a specific message. Maybe you want to change it there. And we can do it from link clicks. So if they're on a page and clicked a specific link, or on whether that's on our website or on an external website, so we can customize the page. Maybe a partner sent them and we want to actually put a partner's logo because we know they sent them, and create that kind of connection there. It can be based on their browser language, right? I can do some personalization on that. It can be based on a device type, whether it's tablet, mobile, desktop, right? And so step one in your plan was, what's your goal? Step two is knowing who you're going to target and the method you're going to use to identify them. Now, step three is data. And this is a lot of times a marketer's favorite subject. Anybody know this movie in here? Anybody and he might be dating myself with this a bit, but this is Office Space, and it's a classic from my younger days. And if you haven't seen Office Space, these gentlemen, they all work in an office together, and that printer is constantly jamming, and everybody hates that printer. And it really frustrates them so much, and it's the bane of their existence. And so finally one day they take the printer out to their field here, and they get their revenge. And here's the rabbit. And so, oh, did it stop playing? No, keep playing. All right, it's not gonna give me the love here, but only played a little bit. But so look, this I love this scene. They come out, they take the field, they get their advantage, and this is how I feel like every marketer thinks about and talks about data. But data is really, really important. You can't do personalization without the right data. So let's dive into part 3 here, which is data. Oh no, I am having issues with my slides. I might have to do this. 1 second. I might have to start this over. Let's try again. Because everything just stopped working.
We can still hear you.
Yeah, my slides just totally disappeared and nothing is clickable for me, unfortunately. Oh, there we go. Now we just went like 5 slides too deep. All right, so it's behind. All right, there we go. There's my kicking. Now I gotta get my sorry, just give me 1 second here. I might have to restart this. Okay.
That's the thing
There.
about technology. It's only great when it works.
Yes. All right, so let's see if it's gonna give me the next slide here. It's loading. Come on, next slide. Give me some love, please. There we go. All right. And am I still recording? I am still recording. All right. So when we're considering data, there's a few key things we know to look at. First, that the data exists. Do we have the data we need? And so if you remember some of those characteristics we defined early on and kind of those known users that we might want to collect with them, that's where you can start collecting those data for those characteristics if we don't have it. Now, one thing I want to point out when it comes to behavioral data, like what a user clicked on, what pages maybe they viewed, when they last visited, and way more, really all of that. If you're using HubSpot, there's nothing you need to do. HubSpot's automatically going to track what users are doing and allows you to easily use that data for personalization. You don't need a CDP or multiple systems, cobbled together. It's just there and ready for you out of the box. And so the next question to ask about your data, is it accurate? Is it correct? How was the data collected? Was it imported, for instance, from like ZoomInfo or Apollo, or did customers put it in themselves? What's your confidence with that data? If it's not good data, sometimes you just have to dump it or just start fresh with those fields. And then finally, is it clean? Are you using open text fields where you should be using drop downs and you have no consistency in your data? Do you have data spread across multiple of the same field? Maybe the data is duplicated or conflict with each other. So you need to have accurate and clean data in order to do personalization, because when you don't have data, things can go very badly. I'm going to show you a few examples of that later on. So when you what do you do if you don't have the data that you need? And the first part is really just start collecting it. So update your forms to get the right fields that you need. Make sure they're in the right format that you want them in. Make sure it's going to be clean. And you can even start thinking about data collection campaigns. So you remember earlier we talked about that stat 83% of people are willing to share their data enable personalization. So you could do things like giveaways to collect the data. You can include pop-ups on your site, for instance. You could do surveys that just collect the data. So you can supercharge your effort by creating some campaigns that begin to collect that data. And so sometimes this is the question that comes up: should I enrich data? So when talking about data, this is one of the most common questions I hear. Should I just go out and buy some? And so depending on who you talk to, some may say yes, some may say no. But when it comes to personalization, in my strong opinion on this is no. So third-party data is often unreliable. You're never sure what you're going to get, how accurate it is. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. And if you get personalization wrong, it's a huge hit to your visitors' trust. and you never want to lose that visitor's trust. We'll go into some more a little later on. So when it comes to personalization, I would say skip the third-party data enrichment services. It can ultimately lead to some bad results. Now, the fourth step is actually the actual tactics. And now, the most common among these is web content replacement, where I'm changing copy, images, videos, maybe CTAs based on who the user is. I can personalize ads on social platforms and search platforms based on who they are. I can create dynamic automated emails. I can trigger powerful automation based on the behavior. So there's really an endless amount of possibilities. I'm just touching on this briefly now because my next section, I'm going to do a deep dive on all of these items here and just go into some examples. But one thing that is really important for you to help you choose what tactics you use is actually mapping out your customer journey and looking at the path that users are taking through the site and looking at every single touch point that they're going to encounter. And you can see what pages they're visiting early in the journey, which may be good targets, for instance, for unknown users when they're early in the journey and maybe more simple personalization. And then you could look at touch points later in the journey, which may be more useful for known users and very specific personalization. And so this is a really important step that if you're doing any personalization, I would highly recommend mapping out that journey because this is going to help you identify where to target. And then our final step is just, hey, once you're done, look at your efforts, right? Review what's happened. How can you optimize it? And so it's, designing a strategy is important, but arguably, what's more important is actually determining if that strategy worked. So consider how frequently you'd like to review results, how you want to document those learnings and communicate them to the rest of the team, and when to invest in additional personalization efforts. And so just to recap, we looked at goals, we looked at audiences, we looked at our data, we looked at personalization tactics, and we looked at reviewing and optimizing. And this is really what the core of what makes up a personalization strategy. So one final note I just want to give on strategy before transitioning more to the tactics is I really encourage you to start small. I've seen too many efforts get stalled out by designing these bigger, intricate strategies. Look, just choose one page to start personalizing. Choose one group to target. Don't let the data hold you back if you don't have it, right? Maybe just start fresh if it's too out of hand. Data sometimes is where people get stuck sometimes, and so don't let that hamper you. But I always caution: start small. Don't go with these big grand plans, necessarily, and just get started. So, personalization gone wrong. Let's switch gears and talk about that a little bit. So, it can really easily go off the rails. So, just like we talk about, you need clean data, and so uh, you know, there's a few different areas they can go wrong, right? It's having the right data. Sometimes if you have a really complex tech stack, that can be an obstacle, right? If you're not using HubSpot, I'm sure most of the people here are using HubSpot, and that's probably why you're here. But if you're not, you're probably cobbling together several systems. You might have a CDP, a marketing automation platform, a CMS, and just getting all the data to talk to each other so that you can do personalization can be really difficult. HubSpot makes that really easy, which is one of the great advantages of it. And don't look at personalization just like a one-time thing. It's not something you really want to set and forget. Something you want to keep working on. And finally, too much personalization or personalizing too soon, also known as being creepy, as I like to say. You don't want to be creepy, right? No being creepy. So personalization is about trust and transparency. And according to Accenture, they report 27% of consumers have reported a brand experience that was too personal or invasive. And almost two-thirds, 64%, say it was because the brand had information about the consumer that they didn't share knowingly or directly. So brand and consumer relationships are no different than their real life counterparts, right? When one party goes outside of the relationship for information, the level of trust gets broken. And so if you went out on a date and your date knew some personal information about you that you hadn't shared and wasn't publicly available, how would that make you feel, right? You might be like a little creeped out. You might start feeling like maybe you're on a date with Beetlejuice here, right? And so this is also another reason I don't like buying third-party data for personalization as well. But above all, remember, never break your users' trust and be transparent about your data usage. So just a few quick examples. These are These are more like social and email examples versus web examples, but I think they just demonstrate exactly kind of where things can go wrong. So this is the first one here. This is a brand send a congrats on your new baby email, right? The problem is the user is dealing with infertility and Mother's Day had just passed for them. So this was definitely not the right message to send to this user at this time, right? In the second, the brand targeted user with messaging around getting married. The problem is the user, in fact, was single and it was a really unwelcome reminder for them. And in the third example, you can see just the high classic, F name email that I'm sure you've all received at some point. But look, here's the thing. I've actually seen way, way worse than these. There were some examples that were so bad that I couldn't even put in here because they were in bad, they would have been in poor taste because of how bad they were. But just look, think of the negative impact bad personalization caused in these instances. I know for those who created those assets, they didn't have bad intentions, but the implications of those errors were substantial. And you never want to find yourself in situations like these. And now, finally, let's look at implementing your strategy with HubSpot. I have this little key at the top. 101 just means this is a no code or low code solution. You won't need a developer. It's going to be super easy for you to do. More than likely, just a couple of clicks and knowing where they are. And then you have the 102. These are going to be more where a developer is required, and you're going to need a little bit of assistance with some coding for that. So the first and most common tactic we see is just web content personalization. And so what this is just the ability to replace your default content that you have on a page with some specific personalized content. And HubSpot has 4 different areas of web content replacement, and these can be both used in your website or in emails. And smart content is what it's called, and it has the ability to swap copy, images, video. You have smart call to actions, which has the ability to change CTAs. You have smart forms, which allow you to decide which fields to show a user on a form. And finally, you have dynamic, I should say, not finally, but you have also dynamic content that allows you to display your information in your CRM dynamically based on who that user is. And then finally, we have custom behavioral events, which you can trigger an action through a workflow based on an activity that somebody actually does on your website. Excuse me. And so smart content's just the first one. This is the most common one. No code, friendly, super friendly tools, super easy to use. And so you can see in the example here, they switch the image and copy based on that user's location. So this is something you don't even have to have information on the user. You can be an unknown user. And they did this based on the time of year. So you can think about an international brand like Shein, for instance, which is based out of China but ships worldwide. They're going to have users in Australia where it may be summer, and at that exact same time, they're going to have visitors who are in the US where it might be winter. And so with smart content, I can create landing pages like a demo page that has different value propositions or images based on the user. I can create an email that would promote one set of events to one group of users and another set of events to another group of users. And so you're really only limited by your creativity here. So this is another example. This is actually Microsoft. The content on the left is targeted to a B2C user who they're promoting the Surface Pro to. And the content on the right is a B2B user where they're promoting Office 365 to. And so there are multiple ways to accomplish this. Again, for known users, I might know who their role or company they've worked for. For unknown users, I could potentially just display this based on their previous browsing behavior or a click activity. And so moving on to smart CTAs, these are also super marketer friendly, no code, and just allows you to swap a call to action on your website or in an email. So you can see in this example here, this is just part of a navigation that contained a call to action in it, and they swapped it out based on who the user is. So for instance, if I know that user is a CEO, I might want to show an offer about revenue generation, which may appeal to them more, versus maybe an IT user, I might show them an offer about security, for instance. Or let's say it's a CEO and they've already downloaded an early stage offer that I have. And that is already about revenue generation. And I know maybe they're already in MQL. And so I may choose to actually show them what the next stage in the process is, right? So maybe instead of showing them the default download that you have, you might show them, hey, let's do a demo or a consultation instead and kind of push them to that next life cycle stage. Then we have smart forms. So smart forms are also marketer friendly, no code tool. And these are going to allow you to dynamically show what form fields you show a user. So what this allows me to do is progressively build a profile around a user. So if you look at an example here, let's say I have an early stage offer like a white paper. The form I'm showing them to the user initially is just going to have their name, email, and company. Let's say they come back and are interested in a middle stage offer. I already know that information, so I'm not going to ask it to them again. So instead, I'm now going to ask them their needs and what their solution maybe they're interested in. And if finally they return again and maybe they're interested in another offer, this could maybe be middle, late stage offer. Now I'm just going to ask them maybe their role and time frame. So I'm able to kind of build this interest profile over time. And sometimes it's just as simple as asking. So, and if you can see behavior that shows that that a user is engaged, for instance, maybe I do some of the new smart pop-up forms that HubSpot has to ask them what their interests are, maybe their role, gather more information. So, and you can ask that in small increments over time and build that profile and enrich your data. Oh boy, I see we have 1 minute left. All right, so I'm almost at the end here. Next is just dynamic CRM pages. So this is going to require a developer. This is going to allow you to dynamically show content to your users based on the data that you have in your CRM. Just because we have 1 minute, I'm going to cruise through that here. And you can see in this example here, this is just where you can create a custom behavioral event where they do one thing, you trigger a workflow, which could be like an in-app message. It could be like an email that gets sent out. It could be a text message. It could be really anything that you can do in there. And so uh, I'm just going to skip the end. We just have these are a couple other things you do: programmable email and that. This is just a recap of what we went over. And then I'm just going to leave some time in case there's any questions here at the very end. But uh, thank you all so much for attending. And I'll just kind of open it up for questions now. And if there's none, I can actually show a quick no. Okay, they're breaking us up. All right, 58 seconds. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks so much for attending. Hope you enjoyed. And if you need anything, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you anytime. Thanks so much.
Thanks.